Chapter is all about what is that? The heart. This is all about the heart. Where's your heart? Where is that? In which cavity? Thoracic cavity. Hey, is that cool? Is that cool? It's in the thoracic cavity. It's above what organ? Nice. It's above the diaphragm. It sits right above it. See it in the picture? There's the diaphragm right there. Okay? And there's the heart right there. It's between what organs? The lungs. Nice. It's about the size of your fist. You know about. Some people have big hands. Some people have little hearts. Who knows? It's about that size. Its job is to pump the blood. And what's in the blood? I'm sorry, 679 is the page number. 679. What is in the blood? That's all? Eyes. Cool. It's all right to take a night off and be here. It's cool. All right. So there's stuff in the blood we've learned because we did the 2%, right? Ions, electrolytes, nutrients, waste, gases. What else? Chapter 16. Hormones. Those things. Now, the heart pumps them because the heart has how many chambers? 4. And which 2 chambers are the ones that actually push the blood out of the heart? And they're located where? At the bottom of the heart, right? The 2 chambers at the top are called. And all they basically do is push blood where? Down into the ventricles. They help them to fill up. Okay? That's the basic idea. So we're looking at this heart, and we're going, oh, interesting that they don't give me the picture that I really want. I didn't know this. Which is right here. Same page in your book, different page for me. I'll make this make sense in a second. The heart has a sac around it. Do you know what that sac's called, generic name for it? Pericardium. See, the layers of the heart all have the word cardium in there. We saw it in lab, but I told you weren't responsible for it there, and you weren't. But they have the word cardium. And the sac around it is generically called the pericardium. That means surrounding the heart. So, of course, I will draw a little heart up here. Like that. And we're going to say top 2 atria. Draw my little ventricles right there. And I'm going to cut a chunk out of the heart right here. And I'm cutting it out for people that are listening because you can't see this. Well, you can. I'm cutting it right here. So this, they've cut up here, right? So this picture that they're describing right here, I am going to describe it too, but I'm going to turn it. And unfortunately, I don't have my program that I can turn it on this computer. But we're going to turn it sideways so that it's here. So do you see this little line right here? See how it's called endocardium? That's in the chamber here, so we're going to say it's right here. And there's the lining right there. Then you see the muscle here. What is that? That's the myo right here. And then you get to the outside, and it's the peri. And there's all kinds of other names and other stuff associated with that. That's why I'm going to draw it for you. That picture's just fine. I just like to draw it with the class so you can see it too. If they had the pen for me, I could draw it and put it up there, but they haven't delivered the pens yet. Hopefully in a couple weeks we'll be able to draw and put it up there. So here you go. What's this? Endo. What's that? Okay, and out here, let me tell you something else first. The outer layer of the heart is called the epicardium. It's another way to say it. Epi. So then there's a little space, and then you have the sac. So I'll draw a little piece of the sac, and notice that sac that I draw out there, I'll put two parts on it. So I'll draw a little line down the middle. They are doing that right here. Here's the sac out there. See how it's got a thick part back here and a thin part at the front? I just pretty much drew them the same size. That's all. So the heart has how many layers? Endo, myo, and epi what? Cardium. Then you have the sac that sits on the outside. Now, the very outer part of the sac, way out here, is tough connective tissue. So they call it the fibrous pericardium. And it should be labeled in your book like that. You should see it, fibrous pericardium. Because it's connective tissue. Fibrous, tough. Will it stretch? It's so tough it doesn't stretch. All right? I mean, it can stretch. If the heart enlarges, it can stretch a little bit, but I mean, it takes a lot to make that stretch. That is a very tough sac. You ever seen one of those sacs in real life? Anybody? Okay. Then we're left with this, the inside. And notice then that it's just separated from by a little space from what? This is separated by a little space from this, which is the epi, right? So there's the epi, a little space, and then there's this other thing. Now, I'm going to flash you back to A&P I. When we learned membranes in A&P I, generically, we should have learned that there are two parts to a lot of membranes. One part that lays on an organ, and the other part that lays on the body cavity or body wall. Let me just write their names real quick. Any membrane that lays on an organ can be called visceral. That's the word that means organ. Any membrane that lines the outer part of the body cavity, or well, it could be the inner part of the cavity, like inside the ribs, but it's outside of the heart there, we're going to call it parietal. Parietal means lining the body cavity. So we have a visceral and a parietal membrane here. Since this is the sac of the heart, what word do you think they put on there? Visceral and parietal, pericardium. So the visceral pericardium and the parietal pericardium. Do you see them labeled in your book? Same picture. Then you should notice the visceral pericardium has two names, doesn't it? What is the other name for it? The epi. So the epicardium is also called the visceral layer of the pericardium. You know, your book's throwing that word serous on there. You don't have to. But you should know what it means. Do you remember what serous means? It means fluid. Yeah, it makes a thin, watery fluid. That means in that cavity between those two that you're seeing labeled as what cavity? The pericardial cavity that you're seeing there, it has some fluid in it that we would call what fluid? Serous. Or if we wanted to name it very particularly, what do you think we could call it? Or pericardial fluid. You could call it both, but we usually call it pericardial fluid because it's in the pericardial sac. The type of fluid it is a serous fluid. The name of the fluid we're going to call pericardial fluid. So look up here for a second so you can see. Once again, this sac goes all the way around the heart. Comes back up, attaches to it like that. It's not as thick as what I made it look like, you know. And it's got the layers in there. And what kind of fluid would be in here? Serous fluid. And what's the name of that serous fluid? pericardial fluid, and then look, you got the sac outside, and outside of that fluid, the sac has how many layers outside of that fluid? Outside of that fluid, only 2 layers, right? See those 2? Inside of the fluid, how many layers? On the sac. Just 1. See? Look. Oh, that's bad. Look up there. Here's the sac. 1, then fluid, then 2. Okay? Of the sac. So, I think that because of the angle of this picture, it's sometimes harder to see. If they would have extended it out a little further and they would have put it on this chamber, I think it would have been easier for you to understand. It's at a funny angle. I think when it's cut open right here, you have a hard time seeing this filled full of fluid because it looks like it would leak all out. But remember, it's like I drew it up here. It's trapped all the way around. Okay? Now, that fluid, why is it there between the visceral and parietal layers of the pericardium? So they don't rub together and create friction and stick together. So the whole purpose of that fluid in this sac is to decrease the friction on the heart. You know, if your heart rubbed your ribs or rubbed your muscles, it would create heat, and it would create adhesions, and it would get stuck, and it would have scar tissue because it's moving all the time. I know without color on the chalkboard that can be hard to see. So those are the layers of the heart. I may ask you to name them. Which layer is the thickest? The myocardium. The myocardium. Does this sac stretch? So what happens if you get a buildup of fluid in there? In that sac? Since it can't stretch outward, what does it do? It compresses the heart. It squeezes the heart. And they call that condition... You ever talk about it in Dr. Kim? Cardiac tamponade. It was a bad joke. Cardiac tamponade. I know. That word is awful. Don't ask me why they would ever do that. I don't know what it means either. That's increased fluid on the heart. It squeezes the chambers. It will keep your heart from pumping. Your heart will stop pumping because it gets compressed. Yeah, that's okay. That's why I'm here. Now, the cool thing is we've already done the chambers of the heart. You know the chambers, you know the valves, you know the blood vessels. Let's just real quick name these vessels. Let's see if we can do it. What kind of vessels are blue? Good answer. We don't know what kind are blue. We just know the blood in them is deoxygenated. Nice. Okay. This vessel here and this vessel here are leading into the atrium. On which side of the heart? On the right side of the heart. Okay? Since they're leading in, what kind of vessels are they? They are veins. Then the blood goes through the heart, and look, it comes out right up here. And it's going out, so it's going through what kind of vessel? What kind of vessel? Artery. And that artery is called the pulmonary trunk, which splits into 2 pulmonary arteries, the right and left pulmonary artery, which send blood to the lungs to turn oxygen-rich red. Okay, so picture a lung out here. It's going to be bigger than that circle I'm making. Okay. Then the blood turns red in the lungs and goes back to which chamber? The left atrium. Nice. So what are these 2 things that carry it back? There are veins. Which kind of veins? Pulmonary. What are these little guys doing? From the right side. Same thing from the right side. They're carrying blood from the right lung Back to which chamber? The left atrium. So all blood going through the left side of the heart's what color? Because it's perfect, oxygen-rich. Then that blood goes shooting out behind this trunk. It goes through the aorta, correct? So remember that pulmonary semilunar valve is in front of the aortic valve, which is right behind it. And then blood goes into the, which spreads to the entire body and oxygenates it. And there you have it. That's blood flow through the heart. It's a mighty nice. Now, I will show you the back of the heart. There's a couple things on the back of the heart that we haven't done yet. When you look at the back of the heart, remember that now your right is their right. Okay? So this is which side of the heart? The right side. And this is the left. So look, here's the left atrium. See those pulmonary veins going into the left atrium here? See, here's the pulmonary veins from the other side, from the right. They're going right here. They all kind of meet up together right there. So if this is the left atrium, then down here must be the left ventricle, and this. Perfect. Now notice this. Here's the inferior vena cava, and here's the superior. They've tilted the heart a little. It's skewed at a little bit of an angle. Here's what I want you to see too. Here's the aorta coming back. Remember, it comes back here and goes behind the heart. Okay? And here are your pulmonary arteries. Right here. Okay, one thing we haven't done yet is talk about what's called the coronary circulation. You guys heard of that before, coronary circulation? In your book for me, go back to 681 for a second. This picture. See, there's a groove between the atrium and the ventricle, and there's blood vessels in it, right? And then you see on the other side over here on the left, there's a groove there with blood vessels in it. Those blood vessels, the major blood vessel in that groove, is called a coronary artery or coronary vein. Okay? Coronary artery or coronary vein. That's the basic name for those structures. Why coronary? Because those are the vessels of the heart. Arteries always carry blood. Which way? Away from the heart. So, up there, you need to think about this. Blood that is red is coming out of which chamber? Out of the ventricle. So, look here. Isn't red blood in this chamber? I mean, in this vessel? What's this called? So look here. Do you see right there? That artery goes back and attaches to the aorta. You don't see it, but that's where it's coming from. This one over here is sneaking through there and coming out of the aorta and going this way. So this is oxygen-rich red blood here. This is the right coronary artery. You see it labeled. And this is the left coronary artery right here coming down. They are carrying blood to the heart muscle. They are trying to feed the heart muscle oxygen and sugar and electrolytes and hormones and all of that stuff. And now it makes sense why they're arteries, because it's going which way? Right? See what away from the heart means is away from the heart circulation. It's leaving the chamber of the heart, correct? It leaves the left ventricle, and then it goes through a little vessel and goes back to the heart, but not in the chamber. It goes to the muscle. So it's still leaving the chambers, leaving the inside of the heart is how you want to learn that. Now, cool thing is, there's little branches, and each branch gets a little name, and I know that in the doctor's office you may use a different name than this. We're just going to go with the basics right here. This one that curves down the side here, they like to call it the right marginal artery. Just check it off on your picture. Right marginal. Notice it goes down the margin of the heart on the right. And then if we come over here on the left, You see the one that curves around the back? It's got a name that means curved. It's called the circumflex. Can anybody tell me, inside the heart, what would be located right about here on the inside? The septum. Good. So running down where the septum is, we have on the front what's called an anterior interventricular, because it's where the septum is between the ventricles, and it's on the front. And it's red, so it's an artery in this case. Those are the main coronary arteries that you need to know, except for one. I will tell you. I will show you in just a second, but I want to tell you that where this wraps around on the right, there's going to be one that runs on the back side of the heart right here, and it's going to be called a posterior interventricular. Talk. Okay, it's called a posterior interventricular. So we've seen all that. Let's go to the posterior so I can show you now. Remember, we're flipped around. Okay? So this is wrapping around the right side of the heart. And right here coming down, we have the posterior interventricular artery, the red one. Over here, this little red one that was coming around, they're not labeling it. Do you remember what it is on the left that circled around? Circumflex. That's the circumflex, the red one right here, even though they're not naming it for you. That is what it is. Now, you know, those blood vessels don't just die and end. The way they draw pictures like this is you look at it and you say, wow, there's these huge vessels, and then there's no more blood. What happens after the blood goes out of the bigger vessel? What happens to the vessels? They get smaller, and they get so small that they're invisible to your naked eye. So there are blood vessels running all over, all through the heart muscle. They are just so tiny capillaries that you don't see them. Otherwise, there could be no exchange of nutrients. So keep that in mind. You should try to Google a picture of the blood vessels of the heart. Maybe Google blood vessel cast heart or something like that, and I bet you'll be able to pull up a really cool picture that shows that if you took all the muscle out, you would still see the shape of the heart through the blood vessels as they get tinier. It's really, really neat. I wish we had one, but we don't have one here. So if we have coronary arteries that carry blood to the muscle, what do you think takes it out of the muscle? Coronary veins, and sends it back to the chamber. So let us think, before we jump in, let us think. If the blood is going to the muscle as red blood, the muscle will do what to it? Take the oxygen out and turn it blue. So now the blue ones that you will be seeing, they will be going back to the heart chamber so they can go get oxygen. If a blood vessel is sending blood back into the heart's chambers to go get oxygen, which side of the heart would it send it to? The right side of the heart, right? Because all blue goes to the right. So watch this. You see this big one right here that I left the mouse on, the puffy one? That is called a coronary sinus. You can't see it, but it goes right here, and it plugs in. There's a little opening here. It goes right into the back of the right atrium right there. It's called a coronary sinus. And then these coronary veins, they like to change their name and call them cardiac veins. So if you look on the back, you'll see one big one. It's called the middle cardiac vein on the back side. And then I'll go to the front, and we'll have a great one and a small one. Do you think it makes sense that the bigger one is right here because it's going to supply all of this and that left ventricle, which is huge, versus the little one being right here? Does that make sense? So you see small cardiac vein and great cardiac vein. And that's all you got to do on the veins. The veins are a lot easier to do there. There is another picture, and you'll like this. It's a little better for this, to be honest with you. You have to scroll through the pages. In your book, it's on 685. Looks like this. And it separates, here's the coronary arteries, and here's the coronary veins, so that you can see them separately, and I think that it helps. So I would suggest that you look at these and practice only labeling the ones that I talked about. Okay? If I didn't talk about it, you don't have to worry about it. Coronary arteries carry blood. See, we know all arteries carry it away from the heart, but that's not what I'm asking. They carry it to the muscle. The coronary arteries carry blood to the heart muscle. Very important. To the heart muscle. The coronary veins carry blood to the right atrium. Nice. To the right atrium. What do we call the circulation of the heart itself? Coronary, right? We use the word coronary, like coronary arteries and veins, so it's coronary circulation. What other circulation do you have? What do they call it instead of respiratory? Pulmonary. They call it the pulmonary circulation, right? Do you know what they call the circulation that goes to the entire body? Right. They call it systemic. And you notice you're on the page in your book that shows that person that we had before and the lungs that we had before. That is what I'm talking about. There's a pulmonary circulation. Which side of the heart regulates the pulmonary circulation? The right side. Right pumps to the lungs, correct? Which side regulates your systemic, your whole body circulation? The left. And which side is actually regulating your coronary circulation? Which side is it pumping out of to go to the heart muscle? It's out of the left also. See, the coronary comes out the same side as the body. So coronary is also the left ventricle, is also feeding the heart itself, as well as the whole body. Why does that make sense? What color's the blood? Would you want red or blue blood going to feed your heart muscle? Why red? It has oxygen. Does your heart want to live? Do all organs want to live? What do they need to live? Love. They need oxygen. What else do they need? Nutrients. What else? They need water. They need electrolytes. You know, they need all those things. Might they have some waste that they dump in there that they need to get rid of? Yeah. Okay, you get the picture. We keep repeating these basic things over and over again. All right. How many valves? 2 of them are called AV valves. The other 2 are called semilunar valves. Those valves we know are shaped differently than each other, correct? I'm moving through page 687. Remember, if we did it in lab, you need to understand that information for lecture. So I'm not going to go back through the cords and through the papillary muscles and name each valve again. We will talk about the valves, so we'll be using their names in a minute. But we're going to build on some of that as we go through here. What is the job of a valve? Good, to prevent backflow. To allow flow to be only one direction. By the way, in case you haven't read, this chapter is pretty good. A lot of it's really well written. If a valve is not working right, if it doesn't seal, if it leaks, what's the fancy word to describe that? There's actually a lot of words. You can, but we're going to use first, the most basic one is incompetent. Yeah? The valve don't know what it's doing. It's incompetent. It's not working properly. You can see that spelled for you if you don't know how at the bottom of 688. In italics. The incompetent or leaky valve. Now, sometimes that leaky valve is bulging into the other chamber the wrong direction, and they can say that that valve has prolapsed. That's a valve that opens up backwards, basically. It's prolapsed into the other chamber. Want me to spell prolapse? P-R-O-L-A-P-S-E, prolapse. So we can say leaky, we can say incompetent, we can say it has prolapsed. It's all referring to the same kind of stuff, that valve is not closing. So if you look up here at me again, I'll do this thing that I did last time. Here's the two chambers. What two chambers are these? The atria. When they contract, blood goes down. And through which valves? The AV valves. So look at their angle. It opens them, right? Just like it's opening my arms. Now blood is down below the AV valve in what chamber? Ventricle. Ventricle contracts, pushes blood, and it does what to the AVs? Closes them. And then the blood continues moving, right, beside the valve, up and through these other little valves, the semilunars. And then blood squirts out. And then the chamber quits contracting, and what's this valve do? It stops because the blood's not going out, and it closes. Okay? Remember, it's the blood flow stopping that allows the valve to close, because the heart quit contracting.